This is a tutorial to set up SimView. At the time of this video the current version is 0.1.1, with some ongoing development features. Let's first see how SimView works. SimView runs two processes: SimView HTTP and SimView Writer. SimView Writer gets data from AC server UDP plugin port. Therefore, to use SimView you need to enable UDP plugin port for Assetto Corsa server. Writer process also parse logs of AC server to get some extra information. All the data is written to MySQL DB. The other process, HTTP, reads data from DB and act as UI server. The port used by HTTP server need to be open to world to view UI pages. When running multiple AC servers you need to run multiple writer processes, one for each AC server, but only one HTTP process is required. First we will start with Linux installation and then see how to run on Windows later. In first step we will set up our MySQL database which will be used by SimView. I have already installed MySQL 8 server and you can see it is already running. You can follow the tutorial which I linked in the README file to install MySQL server on both Linux and Windows servers. I have also set up a Assetto Corsa server with required car and track files. For SimView to work, AC server should also contain UI folders of respective cars and tracks. I have copied SimView Linux binaries. Let's extract its content to SimView folder. Let's see the content of the SimView folder. You need to remember the absolute path for the SimView SQL file which will be used in a while. Now let's log in to our MySQL server and create a database. Here I am naming it SimView, you can use whatever name you want. Now we will create a user which will have access to our SimView database. This is just a good practice and not required, you can always use root user if you want. Okay, so let's see if everything is working and we can access the database using SimView user. Perfect. Now we will create required tables using the SQL script which was included with binaries. Looks good, all our tables are set up now. Now we need to configure SimView. This is our detail config file which contains all the config used by SimView and their default value. Let's create a duplicate copy so we don't have to modify the original one. This copy should be named config.toml. This is the file which SimView will use to read configs. First let's get the path of our Assetto Corsa server. In our case it is /home/ubuntu AC server. Let's go back to config file. Here it contains some detail about how configs and their type work. So wherever it is written ~string. Integer or bool, you have to change it based on your configuration, else SimView process will not start. In this version there are only 4 places where you have to change config, rest all you can leave as it is or change depending on your requirement. First let's change the game path. This is the location of AC server. This will be different depending on if you are using the dedicated AC server app or full AC installation. This has to be absolute path with no trailing slashes. Now these are configs for SimView HTTP server. You don't need to change anything here. If you face performance issue, you might want to test around with different number of thread or DB connection pool size or cache size. But the default value are pretty good to work in most of the situations. These are configs for logs. By default it will write logs to a file in logs folder. Every time a SimView process is started it will create a new log file with current date and time in its name. Okay, now AC server configs. Actually before that let's finish rest of the configs. Here you only need to change user, schema if it is different from SimView. And now we'll add password to access our database. This is new config which will be available on 0.2 version. You can use this to override the default car class for any car. As the default car class in AC are mostly not useful, this can be handy config. Whatever you specified here will be displayed in the UI. So let's set BMW Z4 car class to GT3 as this is what I will be driving in demo. You can change value later also. So now only AC server configs are left. For that let's first check the server_cfg.ini file of our Assetto Corsa server. Since SimView works by using UDP plugin feature of AC server, we need to enable it in the server. UDP_plugin_local_port and UDP_plugin_address configs are used to enable this feature. In Windows you can enable it from UI and AC Server Manager. Here AC Server will send data from UDP_plugin_local_port, which is 10001 in our case, and it will send data to port in UDP_plugin_address which is 10002. These port we need to input in our SimView config. Here first config is ac.server.udp.port, this is the port from which AC sends data, therefore it need to be set to 10001. And second config ac.server.udp.local.port, this is port used by SimView to receive data from AC server, this is 10002 in our case. Don't get confused by word local here and in AC server config. Okay, let's change name also for this event to SimView demo. If you leave empty it will use the AC server name as event name. Now all our configs are done, let's start SimView and AC server and see if everything is configured properly. To start SimView in Linux there are respective helper scripts SimView_HTTP and SimView_writer. You can check their usage by using help flag. For SimView HTTP process there is only start and stop feature. Script will prevent you from running multiple HTTP process as it is not required. For SimView writer process we have option to run multiple writer process and also stop them. Multiple writer process are only require if you are running multiple AC server. Let's start the HTTP process. Let's check in logs as well. Now start writer process. Let's verify in logs also. Remember to start writer process before starting AC server. Now we need to start our AC server. Here is simple script which I use to run AC server in Linux. This will create separate logs file whenever it is started. Separate logs files or overriding the single file on restarts is necessary for writer process to correctly parse log files. If you keep appending to single log file on every restart, SimView won't be able to parse correct value. On Windows, new log file is created by AC on every restart. Now check the log if server is running. Now let's move to demo. Our event is coming in UI. SimView demo is the name which we gave in config file, and below that is the server name. Currently it is not opening as for practice session it's disabled. Let's join the server and skip to quali. Now you can see the blinking red dot. So now we can go to live session page. Here on left side is the event information. And on right the track conditions. Grip level is updated when a driver completes a lap. Let's start driving now. Apologies for bad driving as I am driving on keyboard. During quali session lapse time will only show after a valid lap is done by the driver. Now you can see all the time are updated. Let's skip to race now. Page automatically transition to race page when quali is finished. Let's drive now. In race session lapse time are updated when a driver finish a track sector. Now let's go quickly through Windows setup. I have configured the database already. You will have to do similar process which we did for Linux. Let's go inside SimView folder. There are no scripts like Linux, you can directly run the executables. For config I have already created config.toml file with correct values. For logs I have set it to console so we can see them directly. You can use file as well. Now let's start both the processes. Writer process is waiting for Assetto Corsa server to start. For AC server you need to enable UDP plugin from Server Manager. You can see writer process is now connected to AC server. That's all for this tutorial. If you find SimView app useful, do leave a review on Race Department.